The New York Times calls it a Watergate moment. FBI Director James Comey discovering on the news that he'd been fired, just as the Bureau is investigating the Trump administration's present and past ties to Russia. Is the comparison to the 1973 firing of the special investigator into the Nixon White House a fair one? What will be the fallout this time? The official reason, Comey's handling of the investigation of the private email server of Trump's campaign rival Hillary Clinton. How will this firing define Trump's presidency, his way of governing, and his relations with his own government agencies? Also, as the Russian foreign minister visits Washington, what really is the attitude of the Trump administration towards the Kremlin? Will this latest twist play to Vladimir Putin's advantage? Today in the France 24 debate, we're looking at the firing of James Comey. With us, he's a former U.S. federal prosecutor. Alex Whiting teaches at Harvard Law School, currently a fellow at the American University of Paris.
That's correct.
Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, François.
Thanks as well to former Washington correspondent for French newspaper Le Figaro, Laure Mandeville, senior correspondent, the author in French of Qui est vraiment Donald Trump? How would you say who's really Donald Trump?
Who is really Donald
Who's the
Trump?
real Donald Trump? Or
Who is really Donald Trump?
Who is really Donald Trump? Okay. Many thanks for being with us. And from New York, politics and business commentator David Nelson of Belle Pointe Asset Management. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
The France 24 debate on Facebook and on Twitter, the hashtag F24debate. James Comey was in Los Angeles when he got the news over a TV screen, but a formal letter from the president did get sent out to the FBI offices. In it, Donald Trump reminded everyone that 3 times Comey told Donald Trump he was not under investigation. And even though Comey's listed as a registered Republican, the Wall Street Journal describes a mood of increasing frustration among Trump aides and quotes a person with knowledge of recent conversations saying they wanted Mr. Comey to say those 3 little words, "There's no ties." Actually, it makes 4 words. "There's no ties to Russia." Delano D'Souza has more.
Oh, and there's James. He's become more famous than me.
Despite the public pleasantries, relations between Donald Trump and James Comey have always been rocky. It all began last July after the FBI director waded into the presidential campaign when he recommended no charges be brought against Hillary Clinton in her use of a private email while Secretary of State.
Although we did not find clear evidence that Secretary Clinton or her colleagues intended to violate laws governing the handling of classified information, there is evidence that they were extremely careless.
The FBI's decision not to pursue criminal charges against Hillary Clinton only emboldened her rival's argument that she was protected by a rigged system.
Today is the best evidence ever that we've seen that our system is absolutely, totally rigged. It's rigged.
Donald Trump's impression of the FBI changed just days before the election, after James Comey sent a letter to Congress that the agency had come across additional emails in an unrelated case into its investigation of Hillary Clinton's private account.
There's little doubt that FBI Director Comey and the great special agents of the FBI will be able to collect more than enough evidence to garner indictments against Hillary Clinton.
Comey was kept on as FBI director after Donald Trump assumed the presidency. Despite this, relations between the 2 men remained tense. In March, Trump alleged he had been wiretapped by his predecessor Barack Obama, an accusation the FBI's director publicly rejected. Later that month, the agency confirmed it was investigating Russia's alleged involvement in last year's election.
I have been authorized by the Department of Justice to confirm that the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election.
The president took to Twitter to dismiss any Russian involvement. Last week, his former rival Hillary Clinton said Comey's actions in October and alleged Russian meddling cost her the election. Comey said the thought he influenced the outcome of the race made him sick.
Look, this was terrible. It makes me mildly nauseous to think that we might have had some impact on the election.
Donald Trump's sudden firing of James Comey puts an abrupt end to a troubled relationship. Some are drawing parallels to the Watergate scandal when Richard Nixon fired the man leading the investigation.
Alex Whiting, I want to pick up on two elements in that report. First of all, that accusation by Donald Trump that there had been this illegal wiretapping of Trump Tower. And second, the remarks we heard James Comey make, those recent comments about whether or not the election was influenced. What, in your view, was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back, the breach of faith between the president and the head of the FBI?
Well, I think that it's the accumulation. I don't think there was a single thing, but there was an accumulation of events that have been sketched out by your reporter here. The refutation of the wiretapping, the investigation, and I think there's just a sense that this investigation into Trump's aides, Mike Flynn in particular, but others, just isn't going to go away. It's going to continue, and it dominates the news. And I think Trump became frustrated by that. Isn't
going to go away, Laure Mondeville, do you agree?
Yes, I agree, and I think it seems like a sort of abrupt and pretty disastrous, in the short run, move on Donald Trump's part. But the question is it going to play out, dramatically in the long run? Because as you mentioned, I mean, your reporter mentioned that it's the beginning of a Watergate, scenario. And I think we've been seeing the Democrats in the opposition for weeks now, for months, actually, pushing this scenario that we're getting close to a Nixonian type of scenario for the Trump presidency, which is actually explained on their side by the fact that they haven't really accepted this president ever, that he was elected. But we have to be very cautious about, is it going to become a Watergate? We don't know. There is still huge mystery about that, but it's certainly a PR miscalculation and certainly a political mistake for now for Trump, because it brings back the Russia probe, something he wanted to push away, and it's coming back at the center of politics.
Coming back in spades. Instead of making it go away, you agree, David Nelson, this is instead going to focus more attention on the Russia probe?
It's going to focus more attention on the Russia probe, and I think it benefits certainly the press and the Democrats to paint this as a Nixonian moment. And like the previous guest just said, we don't know the answer to that. We're not on the inside. We haven't seen the evidence. I'm not sure this has actually crossed over into even a criminal investigation at this point. If, in fact, it is an intelligence investigation, then some of the comments from Senator Lindsey Graham would be correct that a special or an independent counsel isn't warranted yet, but we haven't seen the evidence yet. I'd like to see something before we make that judgment.
We talk about Nixonian, we talk about Watergate, a lot of comparisons, people dusting off the history books this Wednesday, talking about what was called the Saturday Night Massacre, October 1973. Richard Nixon not only fired the independent prosecutor in the Watergate case, Archibald Cox, but also his own Attorney General and Deputy Attorney General for refusing to carry out the president's order. Now, call it a coincidence. Nixon's then National Security Advisor, Henry Kissinger, at the White House earlier. Trump as Trump commented on Comey.
Everybody knows Dr. Kissinger, and we're right now talking about Russia and various other matters.
Why did you fire Director Comey?
Because he wasn't doing a good job, very simply. He was not doing a good job.
Not doing a good job. Alex Whiting, your reaction?
Well, the funny thing is I agree with everything that the Deputy Attorney General wrote in the memo justifying the firing. That is that Comey badly mishandled the relations with the Clinton email investigation, and there's been widespread criticism of him among Democrats and in political circles. However, that's clearly not the reason that the president fired Comey last night. It wasn't because of that. He had praised him for that in the past, as had Attorney General Sessions. This was clearly an orchestrated move to get rid of him because he was a pain to the president.
a pain to the president? So does that extend so far as to say that there was an attempt to cover up or make the Russia probe go away?
Well, I certainly think that the president wants the Russia probe to go away. I agree with Laure that it's premature to call this a Watergate moment because we're far from any criminal indictments. We're far from this reaching the desk of the president himself, which is what was happening with the Saturday Night Massacre with Nixon. However, it is comparable in this respect that it is a politicization of the independent Department of Justice and the law enforcement function of that Department of Justice, and that is very, very serious.
Okay, let's talk about that. It's the FBI directors, they're named for 10 years. Presidential mandates are for 4 years. Usually one gets rolled over into the next administration. There was an exception under Bill Clinton where one got fired for tax evasion. But were you shocked? Were you surprised when you saw this announcement?
Oh, I was absolutely shocked, and I think everybody in Washington was shocked. Everybody in the United States absolutely shocked by this, and that's right. That the 10 years is designed to insulate the director and to give him independence. Yes, the president does have the legal authority to fire him. There was nothing unlawful about what he did, but it violated the norms of independence of the FBI and the Department of Justice. And that, I think, is very serious.
Laure Mandeville, the politicization of all aspects of government in Washington, is that something in your 8-year stint as Le Figaro correspondent you saw happening?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's a dramatic, demonstration that everything has become extremely politicized in Washington. And, if one thing I brought back from the U.S. is to what extent this country is divided. You really have at least two countries, and they are now, in such, sort of we call in French rupture de ban, in such disagreement over absolutely major elements. And I think the Trump movement and the Trump coming to power has just, sort of widened the gap between the different sides in Washington. And what I think is a paradox in this situation is that Trump somehow, because of what he did in recent weeks in foreign policy matters, with the strike on Syria, had somehow gained back some ground and some legitimacy in the foreign policy area, saying, look, guys, you've been telling me that I'm a puppet of Putin, and look at that, I'm not. I'm the one who actually struck Syria now, and Obama, during his 8 years in power, didn't. So he had to calm down this sort of suspicion that he was going to be this puppet.
And now that suspicion is back and forth.
And now he just gave ground and food to the Democrats to sort of come back pushing and saying, look at that, there is a cover-up, there is a cover-up. As I was saying before, and as Alex was saying, is we don't know if there is a cover-up because, we've seen this investigation going on for a year now, practically a year, and we haven't come up with anything substantial that would give ground to the fact that Trump was involved with the Russian regime. If we find this evidence, it would be huge, and actually it would be ground for probably impeachment, but we haven't seen it. So is it going to come, or is it going to be sort of rotting the whole president's 4 years term of Trump? It's possible. It could sort of remain in the air and rot for years.
This thing that'll simmer and bubble. David Nelson, this politicization of Washington, you agree with the panelists here in Paris that we now face a situation where, for instance, whoever Trump names as the next FBI director will be looked at perhaps with suspicion?
She brings up a very important point. The investigation's been ongoing for a year and nothing of real substance has really been brought to the table. And it probably brings up a more important point. It's really a sad commentary right now on American politics, because I question the intent on either side of the aisle. It seems Washington has morphed into this entity where the only thing that matters is that I win and you lose. It's not about discovery. It's not about trying to get to the truth. They smell blood in the water, so they want to do anything they can to end this presidency as early as 2020, and if they can, perhaps even sooner. I think right now we have to look at who the next director will be. Obviously, it'll be somebody internal. That'll be an interim choice. And that's going to be a tough job for the president to find somebody that can satisfy both the left and right demands for somebody with an independent train of thought. And there's going to be calls for an independent counsel. I question whether that is going to be necessary, but I'm certain that those like Chuck Schumer are going to press very hard for it, which is interesting in that it was, sometime maybe last year that it was Chuck Schumer who was calling for this director to in fact step down or be fired.
Yeah, the Senate Minority Leader. We'll hear from him in part two. Just very briefly before we go to the break, let's say hello to, from Tallahassee, Florida, Republican strategist Rick Wilson. Welcome back to the France 24 debate. You're somebody who's been very critical in the past of Donald Trump. What was your reaction to this firing?
Well, look, I think it's not coincidental that a day or so after Jim Comey asks for more resources for the FBI to investigate the Russia crisis, that he is fired by the president. This is certainly something that I think has given everyone in Washington pause. The swiftness of it, the paper-thin excuse for why he fired him, and the general sort of sense that this is Donald Trump once again trying to short-circuit any possible investigation of his ties and the ties of his associates in his campaign to Russia. It is a striking moment to see a president with very little cause sweep an FBI director out of office.
Alex Whiting, the means and resources of the FBI, are they going to suffer?
No, I don't think that I don't think that the means and resources will. But I think that the investigation will suffer because Comey's out and will need to be replaced. And he was a very strong force and could push forward this investigation. And he was obviously following it day to day. And with him gone, the investigation will be stalled a little bit and lose momentum, but it's not going to go away. And I would say, well, there are two other things I would say here. First is that, yes, there's politicization, but some things have remained sacred. And, criminal investigations in the Department of Justice there is something that has remained sacred about that, and I think something's been lost there with respect to that.
We'll pick up on that point when we come back. Stay with us. You're watching the France 24 debate.
The Observer's Direct, presented by Derek Thompson.
The pine forests of northern Ukraine, devastated by illegal mining. Amber can be worth $5,000 a kilo, and our observers say it's led to a ruthless business. Deep in the heart